the only time you give a complication is if they succeed at a roll, yet roll a 1 as for the complication. And that was where we have been doing it incorrectly. What I was doing was, depending upon if it was interesting to the story, I'd throw in a complication. Daniel, anytime they rolled 1, would go, complication, prepare to be boned.
What can I say? I'm a horrible GM.
No, you're not a horrible GM. You're just like, I get to add something. I get it. Well, anyway, upon further review, looking through, just kind of like breaking down the paragraphs and pulling out the important stuff, it does say that you should use complications to help tell a more interesting and exciting story. And furthermore, it says a complication should only happen a couple of times in an adventure and should get the players excited and more involved about the game. So it's a penalty, but it's not like all the time. Now, I went ahead and looked at the Star Wars Blue Book, which is, for the other people who don't know, Blue Book is the 2nd edition, and looked at it, and they call it actually mishaps. And then they break it down between penalties and complications. Well, they actually gave a ratio of how often a complication should occur. And by the 2nd edition, Blue Book rules, it says it should be about a 1 in 6 chance. So that means that just a normal subtract the wild die and the next highest die would be the penalty. That happens 5 times out of 6. So that tells you how often a complication actually should occur. Thoughts on that, Daniel?
It means a lot because with my method of complicating every 1 on a wild die, it led for it wasn't, it's not run and gun anymore. It's not snap, 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 snap. You have to slow down because you've got to think of this complication. And what if a character keeps rolling 1s over and over again?
The Harris.
Yes, the Harris.
The Harris. If people have been keeping up on the podcast, I have a character that plays on Monday nights. Or I'm sorry, I have a player who has a character who plays on Monday nights named Harris. And he just rolls a buttload of 1s every single session. So, yeah, it does happen. And I think in Thursday morning's adventure, we had, the first 5 or 6 skill rolls that everybody rolled. I mean, as a group, had 1s in them. Craziness. So, again, coming on back to what a complication should do. Well, first of all, it can put characters in danger. And it also should challenge the characters, basically forcing them to be clever and courageous in dealing with whatever situation that you have there. Now, here's the real important thing. The complication should be directly related to whatever the character was doing. See, I, as a game master, for a while there, was if I couldn't think of anything that was appropriate to the complication, I would bank it and then use that in a sort of semi-related way back to this. Now, I'm a big advocate. If you can't think of something off the top of your head directly relates to adding a complication, or if you put it up to your characters, which I do, I put them up to my players a lot. I'll say, okay, you've got a complication, narrate it. What happens? If no one can come up with it, then just don't try and force it. Just take the wild die and the next highest die and call it a day. Move on. Keep the flow going. Now, there was a bit of advice that I thought was really interesting in it. Now, of course, when you run a Star Wars game, the formula that they suggest is episodes, which is usually, a sequence of events, which are broken up by what are called scenes. And there are several scenes in there. For example, from Star Wars A New Hope, one scene would be them in the bar, in the cantina. Another scene would be them at Starport, when the Millennium Falcon is just getting ready to take off. And then you can break those down by rounds, if something important is happening. So when you have a scene coming up, the game master should take a few minutes when he's writing up his adventure and come up with a few complications for key scenes in the adventure. So that somebody does rolls a 1 on the wild die, and you as a game master go, oh, I've got an idea for this. That way you're not caught flat-footed.
Yep.
I'm just saying, it's a good idea.
It's all about preparation.
Preparation. It's kind of like prom night. It's all about preparation, guys.
Out of the 2nd edition, which is something else we were doing, we decided to take our research to the next level and go look through the 2nd edition. Everybody knows it as the Blue Book. They were referred to as mishaps. Now, mishaps could have formed in one of 2 ways. Penalties or complications. The penalties are more common than complications. penalties are routine. Complications are special events which increase tension and add to the drama of the story. On a 1 or you could roll a die. 1 to 5, character suffers a penalty. On a 6, you get a complication. Sometimes these results are disastrous for character, but other times they're simply intriguing or even humorous. They should be unusual events that help move the story along to help amplify exciting and dramatic situations. Revised and Expanded, just basically took that whole thing, smashed it together, and said, don't make complications so often, and don't try to roll to see if it's a penalty or complication. Make it a complication if they succeeded in a roll. Keep it to be a penalty otherwise. Cameron Faulkenburg has created a simple NPC sheet for GMs.
Yes, I saw that. I thought it was very, very simple, but I thought it had some really cool ideas involved in it. I don't think anybody from the community has commented on it. Your thoughts, Daniel? I thought it was cool.
I like it. It's a great way to keep your stuff organized in the case of a fight. Instead of having to, go to XYZ website or pull out a book to handle an encounter with, say stormtroopers. You can just write down the stats to it, call it a day. Or, if the characters come across an NPC that has an impact on them, and you want to further develop the NPC further along the campaign, say a minor bad that slowly becomes a bigger bad over time, you can do the same thing there. Write all the stats down and then transfer it.
I thought it was interesting, a couple of things that he came up with that make perfect sense. And even though some of the stuff I've written up, I know that it includes these things, but he actually made specific categories for them, were such things as distinguishing features, mannerisms, and secret. I do remember those 3 things being I was like, oh, wow, yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that every single NPC that you have in your game is going to have one of those 3 things. But, they might have a quirky mannerism or a way that they speak. They may have a distinguishing feature. Like, remember Jutini? Or were you around for Jutini?
I don't think so.
Jutini was the Jawa assassin that a crime lord had working for him.
Oh, okay.
I thought I told you about that. He has a little Star of David on him, so he's like a Jutini.
Oh, that's horrible.
Well, it is, man. Actually, in the game, it was funny because I was like, yeah, he's got a little funny thing on there, and people were like asking about it. I was like, yeah, he's wearing like this little clasp thing on his hoodie, and they're like, what is it? And I went, oh, it kind of looks like a Star of David, and they went, no. Everybody laughed. Everybody thought it was funny. Jutini, the Jawa assassin. So, hey, did you get a chance to look at Chris C? He threw up some stats for a big old ship. Now, I have not played Star Wars: The Old Republic, but you have, right?
Yes, I have.
Did you get a chance to look at the Harrower-class Dreadnought?
I looked at his stats for it, and I think it's pretty well balanced for a ship of that size.
I was going to say, it seemed like it was a fairly big ship. It's a capital ship, yeah, but it's a big one.
You have revisited the ionized controls.
I have, because I keep going back with them. Sometimes I think they need help, and then other times I'm like, maybe just a little addition to them. But then, I'm a tweaker. I like to tweak kind of stuff. Well, I've gone back and I've taken a look at it, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that as it stands right now, written in 2nd edition, revised, expanded, they work just fine. Just a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, shields do not block ion cannons. Also, if a ship suffers a number of controls ionized, as it has a maneuverability, its controls are completely frozen, and it cannot do anything for 2 rounds. It maintains its speed and direction, and the pilot must make piloting rolls, or the ship automatically crashes if there's anything to crash into, or just basically spins out of control. The thing is there's a couple of problems with this. The first one being is controlled ionized are not really cumulative. They last 2 rounds. That's it. They last for 2 rounds and it's gone. So basically, it requires a success of 16 plus to lock up its controls, and even then, it still recover after 2 rounds and can still escape. Also, being shot with ion cannons apparently does not affect movement. I see nothing in there that says that it affects your movement. So the things that I would encourage people to include is that whenever the ship is hit by a controlled ionized, not only does it subtract 1d from stuff like maneuverability, shield, fire control, weapon damage, but I would suggest that it subtracts 1 from the movement, and I would also make it so that it requires they won't be able to go into hyperspace for those 2 rounds, and that furthermore, that the astrogation computer has lost its calculations. That's my feelings on that. Daniel?
You've done more testing with the ionized controls than I have, but so far I do like the adjustments. I think when you say the controls ionized are not cumulative, is that standard rules, or is that what you're noticing?
Okay, per the rules, a controlled ionized lasts for 2 rounds. A controls locked up, which only occurs when the ship has taken a total number of controls ionized equal to its hull value, then the controls just lock up and they just go in a straight line. Again, that only lasts for 2 rounds. Now, the interesting thing on the table for the number of controls that are ionized, if you roll a 16 plus, it's called controls dead, and yet there is no explanation of what controls dead means. Now, it can be inferred that means that the ship just, everything shuts down and goes to emergency power, and that, it doesn't really say what happens or how long it takes to reboot a system. But again, if you go by the models and the rules, apparently they're only knocked offline for 2 rounds. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. It needs to be tweaked, or someone needs to kind of step up and throw some stuff down and say, this is what it means. But the other thing is, that also brings up another interesting question. When I was looking at shields come in 2 varieties. One is an energy shield, which just blocks like energy blasts and stuff like that. And then they have another one, I think it's a particle shield. And it's specifically used so that things can't hit it that are solid, like missiles and mines and space debris and stuff like that. And for large ships, it's something that they actually have to cognitively drop on purpose so that they can launch ships or launch missiles or whatever. Now, the rules state that if the particle shields are knocked off or don't work, that the ship's hull value gets a -2d added to it, or subtracted from it. I was asking in the Ranker pits about this, and I was like, well, if a ion cannon gets around energy and shields and they're not effective, then wouldn't it affect this shield as well? Which means that when you attack a ship with ion cannons, it would actually be at a -2d hull. And I didn't say that should be against the total amount of controls ionized that they could get. For example, if a ship had a hull of 4D, they would still have to have up to 4 controls ionized to be knocked out of space. What I am saying, though, is when they're making their soak roll versus ionization, then instead of rolling 4D, they'd roll a 2D. No one seems to like that idea.
Yeah, I don't think I'd like it myself.
That's okay. It was just an idea. So, that's what it's about. We float ideas out there, and if they work, they work, and if they don't, they don't.
Right.
I guess, I don't know. That's enough about that. We'll move on to something else, like difficulty numbers.
Speaking of revisiting, we're revisiting difficulty numbers. Now, these are the guides by which GMs determine how difficult to make a skill check. There's very easy, which almost anyone should be able to do most of the time. I think it's a 1 through 5 or something like that.
I think it's 2 through 5.
2 through 5, that's it.
Because a one is always
bad. Then there's easy, which most characters should be able to do this most of the time. While these tasks are not difficult, there's a chance of failure. A moderate kind of task that requires skill, effort, concentration. There's a good chance that your average character should fail at this type of task, but most highly skilled characters can succeed. There's difficult. These tasks are hard and quote-unquote normal characters just coming out of the gate, can only succeed at them once in a while. These tasks take a lot of skill. There's very difficult. Even professionals have to work to pull off this task. Only the most talented individuals in the galaxy succeed at these tasks with any regularity. I would say an example of a very difficult task would be
Han Solo flying through the asteroid field.
Yes, absolutely. I'll go with that. That was an excellent example of space transport piloting.